hi, and good evening to everyone. Tuya and I are up north of the Arctic Circle in the Little Bear Meditation Center, and I'm invoking the fifth ray to help me with the technology of all this. But I think I have a way now, this time, for you to see the text that I'll be reading from. It's from The Problems of Humanity. Well, you could say it's an old book, you know, it's 70 years old, and there have been some rewrites of it coming out of the London headquarters, maybe 20 years ago, something like that. But I think we can stick to the Tibetan's words, and I think we will find it quite indicative even today, because there are many things which just have not changed and need to change before the Christ can reappear. Remember that measure of sharing that he requires between nations before he can reappear, and to do so before that, and a measure of peace had been reached, and before the house cleaning of political and church groups had taken place reasonably, that would be not in the favor of humanity by any means. So the power of the great Lord present when those abuses are still running rampant would be destructive of the intentions which he hopes for. Now, so we're here in the Problems of Humanity, and I hope that I can read this to you in a way that you can also see. I'm trusting that that is or will be the case. I think it takes a little while to change, and there we are. Okay. Now, we had read about a great indictment that he basically brought forward, talking about all the abuses, indicating those abuses, and these abuses are still prominent today. It seems that people are focused largely in their ego and want power and prominence rather than the welfare of all. And he indicts many different kinds of professions that are national and financial, political, so forth. But he says there are other possibilities, and this is what we're looking for now, those other possibilities. We, let's see if I have this here in the right way. Just take a little pause here. Right. So he's, a little segue from before, he's telling us that, okay, the problem is one with which we are all familiar, but we have to bring about happier conditions, and one major adjustment must be made and one fundamental change brought about. Otherwise, and this is the dramatic point, there will be no peace. No peace will be found on earth. The relation between capital and labor, between both of these groups and humanity as a whole, must be worked out. The problem, of course, is between Moonchain humanity, which has been at it much longer and has the energy of intelligence, often exploited for personal gain, personal purposes, and Moonchain, Earthchain humanity, which is a much more recent, of much more recent appearance on the stage in the solar system, even though it's millions of years ago that Earthchain humanity appeared. So, we're all familiar with this problem. It's one which evokes violent prejudices and partisanship. And in the clamor of all that is being said and in the violence of the battle, really the battle between the soul and the personality, if you look at the fundamental, in the violence of the battle, it might serve a useful purpose to approach the subject from a more universal angle, with an eye to the emerging spiritual values. So he goes on here, page 70. We're on page 70 in the Problems of Humanity, chapter 3. Very fitting, because the money of the world is governed by the third ray. First of all, it must be recognized that the cause of all world unrest, of the world wars, which have wrecked humanity, and the widespread misery upon our planet, can largely be attributed to a selfish group with materialistic purposes who have for centuries exploited the masses and used the labor of mankind for their selfish ends. And while, there are no members of the Black Lodge actually working on the physical plane, in physical incarnation, for various esoteric reasons, these types are aligned with them and basically are that category of human being we call the manipulator of souls. Not quite the deluder of souls, misleading through false teaching, or the destroyer of souls, but the manipulator of souls. From the feudal barons of Europe and Great Britain, notice how he distinguishes there. Interesting in light of today's Brexit battles. Okay, I'm just hoping that this is reaching you. The video output is rather low, and I'm hoping somehow we're able to find you. These are some of the little things that happen when you're in the farm and outside the range of the normal internet. Anyway, I'll do my best, and there will be a recording. So, the feudal barons of Europe and Great Britain in the Middle Ages, through the powerful business groups of the Victorian era, to a handful of capitalists, national and international, who today control the world's resources capitalistic system has emerged and wrecked the world. What a indictment is that. Quite an amazing indictment. And I oftentimes quote that line because it is so fundamental to our ideologies today. This group of capitalists has cornered and exploited the world's resources and the staples required for civilized living. It's going to be corrected, what they say, by a group of first-degree initiates on the seventh ray who will organize in a much better way the means, the things by which man lives. But anyway, at the moment, and I still think continuing today, when you look at the resources of food, oil, gas, this group of capitalists has cornered and exploited the world's resources and the staples required for civilized living. They have been able to do this because they have owned and controlled the world's wealth through their interlocking directorates and have retained it in their own hands. So, you know, we speak these days of oligarchy, of control of the national destiny, whichever nations by the super rich. It's been, that word has been applied very much to Russia and people who have friendship with those in high place in the government. And I'm sure we could apply that to the United States, to Great Britain, to any of the powerful nations. Okay, going on, these people have made possible the vast differences existing between the very rich and the very poor. And if anything, it's worse today. They love money and the power which money gives. They have stood behind governments and politicians. You know, you're reminded of the fascistic system which unites high finance and powerful business groups with government. They have controlled the electorate, maybe more than we would like to recognize. They have made possible the narrow nationalistic aims of selfish politics. They have financed the world businesses and controlled oil, coal, power, light, and transportation. They controlled publicly, or sub rosa, you know, unseen, the world's banking accounts. Well, it's really a tremendous abuse of the third ray, obviously. This is the problem. So I hope I am reaching you, because we've got all kinds of flashing going on from red to orange, and that's never a good sign. Anyway, going on. The responsibility for the widespread misery to be found in every country in the world is predominantly at the door of certain major interrelated groups of businessmen, bankers, executives of international cartels, monopolies, trusts, and organizations, and directors of huge corporations who work for corporate or personal gain. They are not interested in benefiting the public except insofar that the public demand for better living conditions will enable them, under the law of supply and demand, to provide the goods, the transportation, the light and power. See, right there, our utility companies are implicated. Light and power, which will in the long run bring in heavier financial returns. Exploitation of manpower, the manipulation of the major planetary resources, and the promotion of war for private or business profit are characteristic of their methods. Obviously, the transition to be made on this planet between the use of intelligence for selfish purpose and the use of intelligence for loving purpose is considerably the focus of intention of those who really care. Well, I guess I've done a little bit of repeating here. Every nation, such men and organizations responsible for the capitalistic system are to be found. The ramifications of their businesses and their financial grasp upon humanity were, prior to the war, World War I in this case, active in every land, and though they went underground during the war, they still exist. They form an international group, closely interrelated, working in complete unity of idea and intention, and knowing and understanding each other. These men belonged to both the Allied nations and the Axis powers. They have worked together before, and through the entire period of the war, through interlocking directorates under false names and through deceptive organizations aided by neutrals of their own way of thinking. So, with some of the neutral countries that were saved because of their financial usefulness to the Axis powers, he is not sparing them. Today, in spite of the disaster which they have brought upon the world, they are again organized and renewing their methods. Their goals remain unchanged. Their international relationships remain unbroken. They constitute the greatest menace that mankind faces today. Now that's quite a statement. Because sometimes you think, well, the nuclear thing is the greatest menace, but the tendency to use those kinds of weapons is exacerbated by these huge inequalities and the discontent and the sense of injustice in the world. I mean, you just, can't think of people, maybe going out to dinner and spending $1,000, let's say, dollars, and other people in other countries having to scrounge for the least little bit of sustenance on the garbage piles. It's just an unconscionable difference. They control politics. They buy prominent men in every nation. They ensure silence through threat, cash, and fear. They amass wealth and buy a spurious popularity through philanthropic enterprise. Their families live soft and easy lives and seldom know the meaning of God-ordained work. They surround themselves with beauty, luxury, and possessions and shut their eyes to the poverty, stark unhappiness, lack of warmth and decent clothing, the starvation, and the ugliness of the lives of the millions by whom they are surrounded. They contribute to charities and church agencies as a salve to their consciences, or to avoid income taxes. They provide work for countless thousands, but see to it that these thousands receive so small a wage that real comfort, leisure, culture, and travel are impossible. Now, he tells us that with the coming fifth ray, Aquarius does bring in that fifth ray, and increasingly so. Right now it's Leo that maybe has the main expression of the fifth ray, leading to the appearance of personalities, separate and separative. But increasingly during the age of Aquarius it will be the fifth ray, and he says it will finally provide the leisure which human beings need in order to cultivate their higher possibilities. So it looks like I'm sorry, but I read this terrible indictment again. Yeah. Some people are saying corporatism, not capitalism. Well, I don't distinguish so much, because he talked about the advancement of the individual or the advancement of the group, which is more the corporatism, and you would expect it. He says selfish groups are going to be much harder to handle than selfish individuals. So, okay, I benefited from hearing it again. The above is a terrible indictment. It can, however, be substantiated 1,000 times over. It is breeding revolution and a growing spirit of unrest. The masses of people in every land are aroused and awakening, and a new day is dawning. DK talks about this as the rising of the will in these groups. A war is starting between the selfish, moneyed interests and the mass of humanity who demand fair play and a right share of the world's wealth. And I think we see this still playing out right now. And, basically, how do we transform intelligent, selfish people into intelligent, loving people, and how much suffering is required to do that? Generally, it is understood that unless a human being suffers, they do not become, at least on this planet, sensitive enough to let in the energies of true love. The stage of personality selfishness is a natural one through which we must pass, but now it's enough. And Aquarius, the sign of universal love, is coming into power, and it's going to work against many of those of selfish interest. Now, it doesn't mean that Aquarians can't be idealistic in a very wrong way and focus upon their corporations, as you were saying, Ursula. Focus upon their corporations in a way that seeks simply to advance the corporation at the expense of everything else. Separativeness can still prevail, but the universality of Aquarius is going to work against it. And then he starts with a little upbeat here. There are those, however, within the capitalistic system who are aware of the danger with which the moneyed interests are faced, and whose natural tendency is to think along broader and more humanitarian lines. I'm thinking here I'm not in the United States right now, but as a U.S. citizen, I look at Bill and Melinda Gates and all they've given for education and health, and Warren Buffett, something similar. There are many very wealthy people now developing, and they have a conscience. And we can only hope that they realize they've been handed a tremendous test to see whether, they can actually think of humanity first and not their passing selfish interests. And this is also where our esotericism comes into the picture. We have to teach, and we have to teach what is the nature of life and about reincarnation and about karma. And so many people think I can do what I want, and there will be no implications. I just have to die and get away with it, as it were. But the tree you plant today will be waiting for you, for good or for ill, in the next incarnation. And the old saying, with karma indicating action, you make your bed and you lie in it. So you've created the conditions, and there the conditions are. And there's no escape for the people who made those conditions. So that's why this ageless wisdom must really, according to Blavatsky, win the day by the end of this century, and we have our part to play. I want to read just a little bit more. They think along broader and more humanitarian lines, and they fall into two groups. First, those who are real humanitarians, who seek the good of their fellow men and who have no desire to exploit the masses or to profit by the misery of others. They have risen to place and power through their sheer ability or through inherited business position, and they cannot avoid responsibility of the disposal of the millions in their hands. And now it's even more, of course. They are frequently rendered helpless by their fellow executives, and their hands are largely tied by the existing rules of the game, but their sense of responsibility to their stockholders and by their sense of responsibility to their stockholders and by the realization that no matter what they do, fight or resign, the situation remains unchanged. It is too big for the individual, and they remain therefore relatively powerless. They are fair and just, decent and kind, simple in their way of life and with a true sense of values, but there is little of a potent nature that they can do. Well, now, there's been so much emphasis upon the problem that people who share wealth, some of the younger, extremely wealthy people do get together to see how they might, in a socially responsible way, focus their wealth. There is now also the second, and that's probably all I'll read for tonight, since I managed to read the Great Indictment twice, part of trying to find a way for you to see the words, that's the issue. Okay, here we go, one more thing. Second, they are those who are clever enough to read the signs of the times. They realize that the capitalistic system cannot continue indefinitely in the face of humanity's rising demands and the steady emergence of the spiritual values. They are beginning, therefore, to change their methods and to universalize, notice the word, how it relates to the Aquarian model, and to universalize their businesses and to institute cooperative procedures with their employees. The employees essentially become, in some of these newer models, shareholders, and they're given stock options and all that kind of thing. So they may not be with a heart full of love like the humanitarians, but at least they're wise and see the trend. Their inherent selfishness prompts the change, and the instinct of self-preservation determines their attitudes. In between these two groups are those who belong to neither the one nor the other. They are a fruitful field for the propaganda of the selfish capitalist or the unselfish humanitarian. Now, this was written 70 years ago, and adjusting this problem on our planet, which has so many of the life units salvaged from the moon chain and even from an earlier solar system, working out their fate in a planetary scheme and upon a chain which does not have the same theme as that through which they were expressing heretofore. So it's complicated then. And part of the very strong focus under the third ray of the hierarchy, and DK talks about a certain third ray master, maybe another one too, that are working very hard at this problem of capital and labor, but because labor can become selfish too, so they have to be careful how they stimulate that group. But one foundational matter is to curb the selfishness of the intelligent owners, and even the growing selfishness of those who suffer under their impression. And of course, there are the poor masses who, well, they just are lacking. You can only imagine, I know I'm talking to people here in the Western world, and this is, I just want to make this little note if I can, end of capital, discussion of resources, and today is 11th of August 19, and we'll see what happens here. I'm not used to using this system, but I want to change this. Okay, so that's good. And the next time we get together, on the 18th, I suppose, there will be another, no, I don't want the highlighter, sorry, excuse me. Oh, the wonders of all of this beginning of attracting money for hierarchical purposes, and it will be, I hope and think, August the 18th. So let's see how that works out. And yes, the answer is yes. See, when you're dealing with the book, the CD-ROM, you can't operate with the freedom that you have simply with a document from Word or from Google, and I can't get those documents to show, but I'm calling some experts and we'll see what happens. Okay, well, it's a big issue, friends, and under the guidance of the thought of Master DK, we will contribute as best we can to the solution, even and especially through our donations ourselves to the good cause, because as you just said, no one has the right to invoke that which he or she does not share. And of course, we have to be careful too, don't we? Because, as he said, there are many, well, maybe There are some humanitarians of extreme wealth within the capitalistic system, and we cannot generalize completely. It's not right to do so and look at them negatively. So let's have a meditation on this. I'll just, right, okay, here we are. So we realize that to those who give shall be given, the occult law, and it's added so that they can give again. We'll just ponder for a few moments on that. Cannot violate the laws. The laws are more powerful than our will when our will runs against the laws, and when our will supports the laws, it is tremendously strengthened. To those who give shall be given, so that they can give again, and even more to those who give all. All is given. Christ and the Buddha and other great saviors and masters, they have given what they can of that which humanity normally values. And if we are withholding, it's just so true, it will be withheld from us. Now we're going to answer in the light of our soul, in the soul-infused mental understanding of our own life. If money is one of the most important things needed today for spiritual work, what is the factor which at present is deflecting it away from the work which hierarchy seeks to accomplish? I just want to suggest to you that if the extremely intelligent masters of the Black Lodge, the Lords of Form, can be called brothers of unique blindness, then ignorance is certainly possible for the many, contributing to the materialistic system in which we are immersed and from which goodwill is missing. We continue questioning ourselves, what is my personal attitude towards money? Do I regard it as a great and possible spiritual asset, or do I think of it in material terms? some combination of the two. Going on, what is my personal responsibility in regard to money which passes through my hands? Am I handling it as a disciple of the Masters should handle it? I suppose the voice of conscience must speak here. Constantly, I think, upgrade our attitude towards this symbol that we call money. I mean, it's purely symbolic. If humanity should simply decide that it didn't count and that it was meaningless, and that people began to disagree about its value and not honor the convention, well, would be on the road to disappearance. And DK warns that, unless we come into a proper attitude towards money, it may be removed. And will that mean a big setback, back to the system of barter? What will it mean? Okay. Now, we all have a fight on our hands, and probably, well, I can't say until the third initiation, even until the fourth, we have some sort of battle that is waged with regard to the negative parts of our humanity, as Hercules had. That's the thing. Are we affected by this? And is there a struggle? Are we ambivalent? Are we divided in our thought? How close to being overcome is that head of the Hydra that has to do with the wrong use of money? The fear, of course, surrounding money and having adequate to live and to carry out one's desires. So we are Hercules, we are the soul in incarnation, attempting to live soul values through the personality. And let's remember Humanity is governed by Scorpio to a large measure. The human monads express on the Buddhic plane, and Scorpio is very prominent. Can we see clearly so that we are not overcome by the glamours and illusions surrounding money? But in fact, we can, instead of seeing money as a concretized energy used for purely material purposes and for the satisfaction of purely personal desires, instead of seeing it that way, which is, how it is used so frequently, we can see it as a great stream of flowing golden substance passing out of the control of the forces of materialism, out of the darkness, and into the control of the forces of light. Master Moria tells of the time ahead when men will vie with each other in doing good. Their type of competition, if we can call it that, will be to see who can do the most good. So a type of spiritual materialism will be entering. It's not that under Aquarius we will disregard the material factor which human beings need, but we will have entirely different motives. Then we're going to say the powerful invocative prayer, which, if carried out, would be part of the plans of the Christ, really. So we focus. O Thou, in whom we live and move and have our being, the power that can make all things new, turn to spiritual purposes the money in the world. Touch the hearts of men everywhere, so that they may give to the work of the hierarchy that which has hitherto been given to material satisfaction. The new group of world servers needs money in large quantities. I ask that the needed vast sums may be made available. May this potent energy of thine be in the hands of the forces of light. And I apologize for any trouble with the stream. There is some faltering going on, and we're quite far into the north. I'll be changing modems soon and hope for something better. So then we will visualize the work to be done by those groups which claim our present allegiance. Any group which you know is attempting to carry out the hierarchical plan. Through the imagination, we see untold and unlimited sums of money. Imagination and will can bring it unlimited and untold sums of money pouring into the hands of those who seek to do the Master's work. We say with emphasis, he for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in his name, and with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. So then we think of those groups to which we would like to direct our attention. And we will ask money for whatever groups those may be, whatever projects. I ask for the needed money for and I can demand it because from the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Realize that our work is done in the presence of the Christ and for his sake. Whatever shall be asked in his name and with faith in the response, we'll see it accomplished. His intended transformation of humanity during the Aquarian Age. And so we will say together, we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. And if, of course, he is with us, as he said he would be, wherever two or three are gathered in his name, we are invoked, we are evoked, and we will be with him, and as we attempt to be with him, he will be with us. And And this is just an inner fact. Subtle, but real. So we feel the love sweeping through us, and we realize how much we might be able to accomplish if love and goodwill prompted our financial sharing. We could really help and change the relations of humanity, which DK said are heading for war because of the lack of sharing. Whatever kind of war it might be, certainly we're in the middle of a psychological war, a war on principle. So let goodwill characterize our thoughts and actions, and let us plan our weekly contribution through money, through time, through the organizations and projects that call to us. There's so many ways that we can improve things, and those ways are seen and understood, but the forces of resistance are there, the reactionary forces, and it's not so much by fighting them that we break through, but by making the better way irresistible, both through meditation and through speaking out about it. And so we gather at the feet of the Christ and his hierarchy, and we help redirect the flowing golden substance towards that which it is divinely intended that the plan create. We are also grateful for your contributions to the organizations that we work with. University of Seven Rays, Moria Federation, Seven Ray Institute, Blue Rose Sisterhood, and of course, we know of many organizations. We try to keep them going because they are the bridge between the science of the hierarchy and normal knowledge of humanity. And I'm going to play the first great invocation, which is about peace and love and the forces of light.
Free.
to everyone, and next couple of days are usually the quiet days, but we will have the pentagram, sacred pentagram meditation, and preparing for the Leo Sirius full moon in the middle and later in the week. So many blessings to everybody, and goodbye from Tuya and me at this time.